Welcome to the Warship Tactics Podcast, episode 65, Do the Little Things and Talking Clan Bases 2.0. I'm your host, Maddminister. In the Warship Tactics Podcast, I discuss tactics and tips to help you improve your World of Warships gameplay. Now let's jump into the action. What do I mean by do the little things? I'm talking about all the little things that don't necessarily show up in your stats or show up in the post-screen recap that can help you help the team win or actually help you improve statistically in the game if the stats are what's important to you other than the win percentage. We're talking about how much damage you potentially do and things like that. So it's the little things. And they don't get discussed much in World of Warships. They're not really pointed out much in World of Warships because, one, there's really no tutorial built into the game. But then most of the things I'm going to go over probably wouldn't be touched on anyway. Mostly what we hear is do as much damage as you can. Try to take capture points. Win the game by killing as many ships as you can. Some minor things that we see in the game are the ribbon rewards. You get to see how you're doing, how many citadels you got, how many fires you started, how many cap defense ribbons that you're getting, how many ships that you spotted. But there are other things that we can do in the game to not only help ourselves do better in the game, but possibly help the team win. And they're what I call the little things. And I hint on some of these in my streams. The main one I talk about is trying to create crossfire angles to get the enemy fleet into based on how your team deploys. But we'll get to that. So basically what I want to talk about is I'm only going to go over 7 things. There's probably a lot more that we can do, but these are the 7 things that I felt that are kind of important, that there's nothing given in the game and there's no hints in the game. There's nothing to point you in a direction to do some of these things. And what I'm going to be talking about, some of them have to do with something you might do right before you know that your ship's going to go down. I'm getting ready to lose the ship. What can I do when my ship goes down it can possibly help my team in some way, things like that. And we don't really know what they are or what to do with them. And we're really not shown what these things are. So I'm going to name the 7 things that I'm going to talk about a little bit here. And then I'm going to go back and recap them to get a little more detail on what I'm talking about. So the first thing is the little thing has to do with catapult planes. I already talked about create crossfire angles. Stalling out capture points, calling targets, screening for torpedoes, maneuvering your AA bubble. I'll talk about what I mean by that. And battleships, shoot at DDs, shoot at those destroyers. Those are 7 things. Like I said, there's probably more that I can talk about, but I felt these 7 things are something that I try to do on a regular basis. Now, I'm not perfect. I'm not a Unicum player. I forget to do things a lot and let things slip by because I'm not perfect, and I'm sure most of you aren't. Maybe there's somebody is, I don't know. So let's talk about that. So let's go over the one that's kind of easy is the catapult plane. And you notice I didn't say catapult fighter or spotter plane. I just said catapult plane. So depending on your captain build, you may have 1 or 2 catapult planes. Either way, getting a catapult plane in the air can help, not only obviously just helps you, but it can help your team by providing spotting. Now let's talk about the catapult fighter. So the catapult fighter doesn't defend your ship against enemy aircraft, strike fighters particularly, but it can also provide a somewhat of an anti-aircraft deterrent, as the catapult fighter can latch onto incoming strike aircraft, maybe one of the torpedo groups, one of the dive bombers, which can obviously help you. And it can obviously spot not only other ships on islands or give you a little heads up warning on incoming torpedoes, but your catapult fighter also helps out friendly ships that are in its orbiting radius. So maybe you're on, say, the port side of a friendly ship that is maybe 2 kilometers off onto your starboard side, which is the right side of your ship. Port side is the left side of the ship, and you see incoming strike from that direction. Well, you have your AA suite on your ship, whatever ship it is, if you have one. That ship possibly has an anti-aircraft suite. if you put your catapult fighter in the air, it just adds to the defensive capabilities of that ship. Now I know some of you are going to say, hey, wait a minute. If I got defensive AA, I want to use defensive AA, then I want to use my catapult fighter, then I want to use defensive AA, then I want to use my catapult fighter. And that's perfectly legit. And honestly, when you're talking about you, just yourself, or you supporting another ship, maybe you should do that. But if you're in a ship that has a catapult fighter, but you don't have defensive AA, and you know you're next to another ship that doesn't have defensive AA, and you're trying to help out, putting a catapult fighter in the air not only helps you, but it helps your friendly ship or ships that are within its orbiting radius. And that's pretty obvious. I mean that's fairly obvious. That's not really super secret there. But what is something that you see a lot of the better players doing has to do with when you know you're about to lose your ship. If you get yourself into a situation where you're just in the middle of a furball, you're outnumbered 3-1, you're getting focus fired, you're in a ship that has a catapult fighter on it, or a spotter aircraft for that matter, and you know you're going to lose a ship, it's off a cooldown, it's ready to go, boom, put it in the air before your ship goes down. That way, when you lose the ship and you get sunk, your fighter, your catapult aircraft is still up, and it's going to increase the spotting ranges for your friendly ships who may be behind you fighting those same ships that you just engaged with. It'll be up there and possibly provide early warning for torpedoes incoming. If a strike aircraft happens to come through the area, it can help with that if it's a catapult fighter. So that's something that I don't see a lot. And those of you who watch my Arpeggio Blue Steel stream will notice it, because I was playing those ships very aggressively, just trying to have a lot of fun with it. I really wasn't being tactically sound in a lot of situations. I kept saying on my stream that, hey, I'm about to lose a ship. Let me put my catapult fighter in the air so my team has the advantage of it while it's in the air in its minute and a half time frame, to provide them with a little bit of bonus, a little bit of spotting, just that extra little thing to help them out, hopefully overcome the situation, maybe sink a few enemy ships and possibly win the game. So that's what I mean by your catapult planes. A lot of us don't really realize that when we're about to lose our ship, just put it in the air. Your ship goes down, the plane is still up, and it's providing that vision for your friendly fleet as long as the plane is in the air. So that's number one. The number two that I know those of you who watch my streams hear me say a lot is I'm going to try to create a crossfire angle. Now, what do I mean by creating a crossfire angle? This is kind of a real passive thing. This is something you'd probably not really, maybe you're doing it and not quite thinking about it, or maybe you just haven't really thought about it, because I've also said that sometimes when you're maneuvering around on one flank or the other, that you want to stay with your fleet. And for the most part, that's true. But sometimes, especially in like standard battles, it happens more often than not, but it does happen in Epicenter and Domination. Your fleet is maybe moving off to a flank, and for some reason, it's a map that just naturally people want to swing way wide, so they only have to deal with ships one direction, which is why this tend to happen more on standard battle. And say you're in a slower ship, like a battleship, especially in the mid tiers where they're a little slower than others around there. The cruisers and the destroyers can definitely outrun them. And you don't want to drift too far from your base, because you want to be able to fall back to the base and defend it if you need to. As those friendly ships are moving out at an angle out to one flank, as the enemy fleet is coming down and they start spotting each other, naturally at this point in the game with a lot of players now, they're kind of familiar already with angling into or away from an engagement. So if they're doing that, they're going to tend to point their bow, or their stern for that matter, most likely at this point in the game, their bow, at the ships that they see that are on their flank. If you're on that flank, but you stayed closer to your spawn location, or you moved closer to your friendly base area, you can create a triangle between your ship, your friendly ships, and the enemy fleet, and you're going to naturally create a crossfire. Now, if you're by yourself and there's 4 friendly ships on your flank, and there's a clump of enemy ships, most likely they're going to maintain angle toward the bulk of the firepower. And in that case, that's going to allow you to have more clean broadside shots onto those enemy ships. That's if you're in a cruiser. If you're in a battleship that has large caliber guns, obviously battleship, and you're slower, those ships have to make a choice, especially the cruisers. They got to really determine who's more dangerous. Which way should I try to angle my ship? What ship am I going to give the easier shots to? Am I going to give the easier shots to this battleship that has a 30-second reload but can possibly delete me in one salvo? Or am I going to give up the side of my ship to where the cruisers and destroyers are at, and I know that I may live through 2, 3, or 4 salvos? They have to make a hard decision. Or their third choice is they just try to disengage and they give up some real estate on that flank, on that side of the map. And that's a case of you dictating the engagement at that point and kind of taking control of a area of the map by creating crossfire angles. It can also work in the other way. If they know that you're in a battleship that has a higher rate of fire, say you're in a French battleship, and they know your rate of fire is in the high to mid 20-second range, they're going to go make a decision. Go, man, that battleship over there has got clean shots onto me, and it's got a pretty quick reload. Let me angle to the battleship, just deal with the cruisers and the destroyers off to my flank. In that case, now you may have harder shots on that ship, but now you've opened up your friendly teammates to having broadside shots onto those cruisers and battleships, or the destroyers for that matter. And that's what I mean by creating crossfires. Most of the time we think about this with battleships, long distance crossfires though. Like maybe you're not even spotted yet and you're firing over angles at ships that are 18, 20 kilometers away, but those enemy ships can't see you. So they may see their priority target indicator going off, 1 or 2, only see one ship, know somebody else is targeting them, but really don't know where it's coming from. They're just going to maintain wherever direction they're going. But if they see you, if you're on the flank and you're spotted, your friendly ships are spotted, they know they're spotted. By them seeing you, that is another deterrent, because now they know it's a battleship. Now they know they have 14, 15, 16-inch guns pointed at them, or up to 18-inch guns if your Musashi is your motto. They have, now they like, not only do I know there's a ship over there shooting at me, but now I see that battleship. And that little bit of vision that of them just seeing your ship can cause them to reorientate their ships also and give up some nice clean broadsides or to friendly ships. That's what I'm talking about, creating crossfire angles. That's a little thing that's really not cued on in the game anywhere. There's no indicator that you should do this. The next thing I want to talk about is stalling out capture points. Okay, the obvious way to stall a capture point is you shoot the ship that's in a capture point if it's if you have vision on it, and you get base defense ribbons. Okay, that's pretty obvious. But sometimes, now I'm going to go to destroyers with this one. Sometimes you may be in a capture point that the bulk of your fleet is near, the bulk of the enemy fleet is near, and you're fighting back and forth. There may be a destroyer, an enemy destroyer in a cap that you can't see yet. You're around the cap and you're not spotted yet. You have good island cover. Sometimes you just need to sit in cover, even if you get radared. But if you find a nice island to tuck into and just not allow the capture point to be flipped, and you have that battle going on between your friendly fleet for 2-3 minutes, while the other side of the map, maybe because there's a big furball where you're at, maybe one of your other friendly ships took an easy cap point. Now you have a cap advantage because you've taken one, you're stalling one out by just sitting there. And a destroyer sitting behind an island is a deterrent to other destroyers and other ships for that matter, not only because that you're providing early spotting, but they know they just can't come around the island because you have torpedoes. It's a great equalizer. The problem with this is you're not rewarded for stalling out a capture point. You're not going to gain credits. You're not going to gain experience because you kept the enemy team from taking a capture point for 3, 4, 5 minutes and tied up a bulk of their fleet trying to fight your fleet and never get anywhere other than trading salvos and damage and maybe trading kills. You don't get rewarded for that. But in the grand scheme of the things, in the long run, you caused your team to have an advantage by not allowing the enemy team to just take this capture point. The downside to that is you're not going to be rewarded well for it unless you eventually take the capture point and your team wins that gunnery duel and gains the advantage, and then maybe you chase a destroyer off and you get the capture point and you move on to another one. But if it just turns into an extended, protracted fleet engagement, you just sit there and kind of really don't give anything to the battle. Maybe you get radar 2 or 3 times, but because you're tucked in on an island, it doesn't matter. Radar me all day long. You can't shoot at me. But just think about this. The enemy destroyer is the same way. And maybe you just have the patience to outlast the enemy destroyer. Maybe it's like, you know what? I'm wasting my time here. Let me try to move off and go and torpedo something. And all of a sudden, you start taking a capture point because you just decided to stall it out. All of a sudden, you outlasted the patience of the other player and you get a cap. And the enemy fleet knows you're there. They know exactly where you're at. They can't shoot you, but you're taking a capture point. Or maybe they get frustrated with it and they move closer to you to try to engage you and then make themselves easier targets for your friendly fleet. And that's called stalling capture points. You can also stall a capture point that was already taken by the enemy team in the same manner. And if they take a capture point and then you get into it right after they take it, guess what? You may not have it. Technically, they have it, but they're not going to be gaining the advantage from it because they're not going to be gaining any points for it. So in that scenario, even though they have a capture point, say they have 2 capture points, your team has 2 capture points, but your 2 capture points are uncontested, you're contesting one of them, technically you have the cap point advantage at that point. You're gaining capture points twice as fast as they are because you're just stalling their cap out. Again, unless you're fighting or getting torpedo strikes or using their guns or whatnot, and you're not going to really gain credits for that. You're not going to gain experience for that. And it's not going to show up in the ribbons. It's not going to show up at the end of the game in a post-game stats when it gives you at the end of the game. It's not going to show up there. But if you win the game because you won, say it went to duration and you win this 1,000 points to 850 and you sat in that capture point and stalled it out for 5-6 minutes, guess why your team won? If everything else is a wash and equal with your fleet and their fleet, kills are equal, what ships killed are equal, everything was equal except for you stalling that capture point out. Guess who won the game for the team? You did, by stalling the capture point out. But you're not going to see it in the stats other than your win percentage. And I think there's a lot of players that don't really understand that. I actually had a game recently where it was 3 ships. I think my team was down. It was 3 enemy ships left and 3 friendly ships left. There was a Saipan, a Sims, and another cruiser. We were down by points. It was myself in what ship was I? I think it was in the Mogami. I had a Badyani, no, not a Badyani. I had a Chapayev and I think it was a Scharnhorst. The Scharnhorst was chasing down the Saipan because he kind of ended up on that side of the map. The Scharnhorst actually took a capture point. I went and took another capture point because I knew that we had to get all the caps and we had to get the kills. And I knew that I had to chase this Sims down. Well, what happened was the Chapayev was highly damaged. And I was worried about the Chapayev taking a random shot, getting killed. I was really worried about the Scharnhorst getting taken out by the Saipan. But the Chapayev went gun silent. I saw what the Chapayev was doing, moving toward the capture point that we didn't have, got into it, stalled it out, and was taken at the same time, gave us the extra time we needed for the Scharnhorst to try to catch the Saipan or me to catch the Sims, in which the Sims kind of made it easy because he kind of was giving away the direction he was moving in by launching torpedoes at me. And I chased him to the map border, got the kill, got the buffer a little bit closer. By that time, the Chapayev had took the cap. It was still super close because the Saipan killed the Scharnhorst before we took the cap. And then the Saipan had planes going at the Chapayev, but because the Chapayev had stalled the cap out long enough, it allowed us to make up the points, and then we won literally at the last, I think, 10 seconds of the game because he decided to stall the capture point out. And so did the Scharnhorst before that matter. But stalling them out is something you're not going to see in the stats, but it's something that's highly important to give our team a chance to win. The other thing is calling targets. I talk about this all the time. It doesn't matter if you call the wrong target. It doesn't matter if you call targets and there's ships that they can't even shoot it. A lot of the times, your friendly ships will see somebody call a target. They don't know why you called target because they assume, hey, somebody called a target on that. Let me shoot at it because they want me to shoot at it. Players will do that. And you can kind of get your team to focus fire ships by just calling target. I've noticed it. I know I tend not to do it a lot for some reason. It's a secondary thing for me, but it's really important for all of us to try to call those targets. Try to trick our team into focus firing. Even if it's the wrong target, even if it's not the most dangerous target or the proper target, getting ships sunk, enemy ships out of the game, getting the guns out of the game, lowering the numbers, lowering their maximum potential firepower is very important and helps your team win. Now, just calling targets and maybe you don't get the kill, maybe you don't do a lot of damage on that, maybe there's 5 ships shooting at it, and the experience is spread around a lot, and you don't really get a lot of reward for it because maybe the ship gets sunk, but the game doesn't reward you because you decided to call target and focus this one down. The game doesn't give you any more rewards for it other than the passive one is giving your team a chance to win the game by focus firing enemy ships and getting them killed faster, as opposed to 5 ships shooting at 5 different ships. You get 3 of the 5 ships shooting at 1 ship, hopefully, is what the goal is. Maybe you're lucky and you get all 5 or 6 ships to focus one target and just index targets across the board. But calling targets is another thing it's one of those little things that the game really doesn't tell you. It doesn't say, hey, call target on this ship because they just use damage control. It just put out a fire. It just put out a flood. Now let's set it on fire again, attack it because X, Y, and Z. Or we don't know when their heal was used unless you're looking at specific ships and see their health bar increase and you go, okay, the health bar increase, they use their heal. I know it's going to be on cooldown for a minute and a half. Let's focus fire and wipe that heal out. Wipe all that gains back from the ship. The game doesn't show that to us. It doesn't tell us that in the UI. It doesn't tell us in tips, but it's a little thing that can help our team win. Calling targets, trying to focus fire our friendly ships, trying to focus the fire of our friendly ships on the enemy team to lower the numbers, getting guns out of the game as fast as possible. Another one, just screening for torpedoes. Leaning toward destroyers a little more here, but cruisers can kind of do it too. But even if you're out front of your fleet and you know you're super close to the enemy fleet, or you're right on the edge of possibly being radared, and you know if you put your torpedoes in the water, or you know if you use your guns, you're going to get cruisers popping radar, you're going to draw enemy fire, you're going to get destroyers that launch torpedoes in that direction, or if you pop smoke, sometimes just sitting out in front of your fleet 2, 3, 4 kilometers is just enough to provide that screen for torpedoes. You're silent for 2-3 minutes, just sitting there, providing early warning for your fleet. Guess what? It gives your cruisers and your battleships that much more comfort that they're not going to accidentally stumble into the torpedoes. Just having the bigger ships, especially when there's deep water torpedo destroyers in the game, you got to get early warning on those, because by the time they're spotted by the ship that's targeted it, it's too late at that point, unless they're running hydro. It's too late for them. So the ships that don't have hydro capability, there's no aircraft in the air, guess who the early warning is? It's the destroyers. The destroyers can provide a lot of comfort to the friendly fleet by just being out in front of them. Even if you're silent, you're not using your smoke to give away that there's a destroyer out there. You're not launching your torpedoes if you don't want to, and you're definitely not using your guns. You're just being a passive torpedo screen for your fleet as they're using their large caliber or large volume of guns to put targets down. And guess what? You can screen for torpedoes and call targets at the same time. It's pretty easy, especially in a destroyer. You have really low surface detection abilities. You can move around. You're highly maneuverable. And guess what? If you're out there, you always call targets on those radar cruisers when you see them. And if you're smart and you already do what I've talked about, is staying on the edges of those radar ranges, you can help yourself, help the team help you by calling targets while you're out there. But screening for torpedoes, again, is something that you're not going to get rewarded for. Now, I know in the Sharks versus Eagles event, there's actually little mini games, or to say a mini mission in there where you can spot things 15 torpedoes or 9 torpedoes. Well, that's something that'll get rewarded for you. But other than that, you're not getting rewarded by credits or experience by spotting torpedoes, but you're definitely giving your team another edge to overcome the enemy fleet and win the game. And that is the one thing that you will be rewarded with, is a higher winning percentage, which, if that's what you're interested in, that's another little thing that you should probably do on a regular basis. Cruisers can do this too, for battleships when it's later in the game. Maybe there's not the number of ships in the game is low enough now that a cruiser can take the lead out in front of a battleship as you're moving together. Maybe there's a destroyer around, and the cruiser can provide that early torpedo warning for a battleship, especially cruisers that are highly maneuverable, like the Royal Navy cruisers are highly maneuverable. They can avoid torpedoes pretty good. And if you have hydro on your cruiser, and the battleship is a nation that doesn't have hydro, think American or British, if they don't have hydroacoustic search, but you do, you're providing a double buffer for them to go ahead and move through an area, get closer to the enemy fleet, get kills, get the enemy team sunk, get them out of the game, and possibly win the game. So definitely cruisers can also screen for torpedoes. Another thing, here's one I have to explain this a little bit. Maneuver your anti-aircraft bubble. This kind of ties into how I talk about destroyers. I say when destroyers are maneuvering, they need to maneuver by looking at the leading edge of their surface detection range. That's what you're concerned about, not where your ship is at, but where the leading edge of your surface detection range is at. Now, talking about maneuvering your AA bubble, for the most part, we're talking about really strong anti-aircraft capable ships, U.S. Navy cruisers, U.S. Navy battleships. There's other ships in there, but those are the strongest ones. If you maneuver your ship based on your anti-aircraft bubble, what I'm saying is try to keep as many friendly ships inside your anti-aircraft bubble as you can. That is a deterrent to games with CV aircraft carriers in them. The good aircraft carrier players, the ones you have to worry about, the ones that know what's going on, they're not going to strike planes that are just sitting inside friendly anti-aircraft bubbles. Granted, every ship has its anti-aircraft bubble except for the lower tier ships that don't have any guns, but pretty much every ship has some kind of anti-aircraft bubble in it. But the ones that are really strong, like I just said, U.S. Navy cruisers, U.S. Navy battleships, and others, those good CV players that you need to be worried about in the beginning and mid part of the game, unless they're just forced to, are going to tend to leave those ships alone that are operating inside those friendly anti-aircraft bubbles. Try to keep destroyers under those friendly anti-aircraft bubbles, because a CV is not going to just leave his fighter just spotting a destroyer and you're just going to steadily just shoot him down because you have a 7-kilometer anti-aircraft bubble and you're sitting on the island and you're maneuvering your ship kind of with that destroyer a little bit, keeping it within that effective range of your anti-aircraft suite. I don't think, and that's another thing that's really not cued in on the game. Nowhere in a UI does it tell you to try to do that. The game doesn't say, hey, you're in a high DPS anti-aircraft ship, you might want to keep friendly ships inside your anti-aircraft bubble. There's no pop-up that tells you that. There's no ribbon that says anything like that, other than if you shoot planes down. There's not a ribbon that says, hey, you defended 6 ships by keeping them in your anti-aircraft bubble for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. There's no reward like that. It's a small thing to gain a localized anti-aircraft superiority. And the last thing I'm going to talk about for this is battleships. Shoot at the destroyers. It's that simple. Lately, in the last 3 to 6 months, I've noticed battleships shooting at destroyers more, but I still don't think battleships are doing it enough. I touched on this in one of my streams where when I'm in my destroyers and I notice that the battleships are passing up shots on the destroyers, I know that I can be a little more aggressive with them because they're telling me that they're not comfortable shooting at destroyers. That's one less thing I have to worry about. And unless it's a secondary build battleship that's very dangerous, German, French, I know I'm not going to really concern with them. I'm actually going to try to leave them till last. I'm going to deal with the destroyers first, cruisers, and then cherry pick the battleships at the end of the game. But in games where I notice that battleships are taking shots at destroyers on a regular basis, then I start, as a destroyer player, I start worrying about that. Because overpen damage, you can turn your broadside to a battleship, take overpen damage. It's 1,000, or a little bit more than 1,000 per shot, depending on the ship. But you get 2 or 3 of those in a game, next thing you know, you're at half health. If you've had a gunfight with another destroyer that took off a quarter of your health or a third of your health, and all of a sudden you take 2 or 3 overpens from a battleship, guess what? you're sitting on like 20% of your health, and you're going to be not very combat effective anymore. So when I see that, when I notice battleships are just going to take shots at destroyers and they're shooting whatever they have loaded, be it AP or HE, when I notice that from battleships, I tend to give them a little bit more buffer. I tend to give myself more buffer when I'm dealing with them, because I know either one, they're comfortable doing it, or they're just willing to do it. And those battleships that are not willing to do that, they don't really worry me as much. I'll get closer to them because I know that maybe they're not comfortable doing it, or they're not willing to do it, because instead of just trying to get a 2 or 3K shot on a destroyer, they're looking at taking 20,000 health off of a cruiser or a battleship, because they don't know that the reward is based off a percentage of damage done, not the amount of damage. So they took 2,000 HP off of me and 20,000 HP off another ship. Guess what? It's still 20%. Basically it can still be 20% and worth the same amount of reward. That's something I don't think some players really fully grasp, really fully realize. So battleships, and I've been playing battleships lately, but I'll shoot at destroyers a lot. Those of you who are battleship players, man, take those shots at those destroyers. Let them know that you're watching them and you're willing to shoot at them. The destroyer players you don't have to worry about are the ones that are probably not that good, and if you shoot at them, they probably not even paying attention to where the shots came from. But the dangerous destroyer players, the one who know how to play the destroyers, when they notice that going on, trust me, they're gonna deal with you a little bit differently. They're more likely to give you more space to operate, which can help you in the short run, maybe in the long run, and they'll deal with you later. So those are some of the things I say about do the little things. Put those catapult planes in the air. Create crossfire angles when you can. Stall capture points as much as possible. Call targets as much as possible. Screen for torpedoes when you're in the proper ships or orientated properly to do that. Maneuver your high DPS anti-aircraft ships and builds, and keep those friendly ships inside those anti-aircraft bubbles especially when there's CVs in the game. And battleships, man, pull the trigger on those destroyers and let them know that you are looking at them. Those are some of the things that I talk. There's many more little things, but those are probably the 7 that I feel are very important. So keep some of those, all of those, a few of those in your mind, and hopefully those little things will help you take your game to the next level, maybe increase your winning percentage a few points. And anything to help, all the little things that are passive you could do to help yourself will help the team win, and it'll just make the game that much more fun. Because remember, it's a video game. It's for entertainment. You shouldn't turn it into a job. If this is too much thinking or too much to think about, hey, just go out and have fun with World Warships however you see fit. Come and join the World of Warships North American Community Discord. The Discord server is created for the North American community to come together and help each other grow as a community and to hopefully become better players. You can find a link to the North American Discord server in the show notes and at the top of the main page of the Warship Tactics website. A few final thoughts. A short one. The Warship Tactics Podcast is now available on Spotify. It actually got into Spotify at the end of last month, I believe. So those of you who are Spotify freaks, hey, you can listen to the Warship Tactics Podcast on Spotify now. So we had a dev blog on Clan Base 2.0. And basically what it is it's adding percentages based off of improving clans that are building out their bases. And honestly, I think it's a good idea. I'm in a clan, but I have 6 people in my clan, and 5 of them they don't play hardly at all. One of them is a real life friend, his buddies, they just play it here and there. Where I am not a clan that's trying to do clan battles. We don't do ranked. I don't do none of that stuff. It's a clan just a namesake, because I wanted to have my own clan, and I'm fine with that. I have a few buildings built for what I was trying to do, and I've basically funded a couple things I've done all by myself, and I don't have a problem with that. What I did notice is there were some comments about this from some people that feel that this is going to be putting people out who are not in clans, or making it feel like this is the only way to go. And I totally just completely disagree with that. If you're a casual player and you're just having fun with the game, or you're in a casual clan, it's just a group of people having fun with the game, you're not going to really care about the percentages that you're going to earn coal, steel, free XP, elite experience for your commanders, cost of your ships, how much ship XP bonuses you have, and your ships will cost less. Those of you who are just having fun with the game and just hanging out in those casual clans really don't. That doesn't really matter to you. Those of you who are hardcore into clan battles and in those top tier clans, yes, this stuff is important for you. And guess what? You found a group of people who are taking this game serious. You're gonna get a clan together or join a clan, and these are the things you're gonna look out for. Is it required to progress in a game? No. A single person can be in a clan by themselves. Actually, they don't have to be in a clan. Never pay a single dime for this game and get every tech tree ship in the game. You can max out captains in every ship if you want to and have them all and have everything in the game that doesn't actually cost money. You're even going to earn, stuff that, you'll earn free experience to even get some of the free XP ships. Think about it. Missouri, Musashi, Kronstadt, those kind of things eventually. And out of crates of freebies, you're going to eventually earn doubloons that you could probably even buy some premium ships with or premium time and never spend a single penny. None of this is necessary. I think it's good that Wargaming is doing this for clans, for those that are hardcore into it, but it doesn't leave everybody else out because eventually you're going to get the same thing anyway. It's just how fast you get to it. So I think it's a good thing, and I think some of the comments about it being a bad thing or an elite thing or an elitist thing, then you know what? That opinion to me just doesn't hold water. I just don't see that at all. I don't think it's a big problem. That's just my 2 cents on that. That's my opinion on it. I'm glad to see the changes coming because I just like to see the game evolve and see what they can do with it. So last thing, torpedoes in the water are nobody's friend. Those are deep water torpedoes, and I'm not even going to say anything to the destroyers because you're safe. I'm your host, Maddminister, and you've been listening to the Warship Tactics Podcast, where I try to help you improve your World of Warships gameplay. Visit warshiptactics.com to subscribe for new episodes on Mondays. Thank you for listening.